want to start out by thanking everyone for coming in tonight. I know it was probably, or maybe a little difficult to find the 10th floor up here, but we're glad to have you all here. My name is Deanna Ball. I am the current president of the board of directors for USA Ultimate. I'm just starting my second term there. I've been involved in Ultimate for 20 plus years. I don't count anymore. So I played for about 15. I coach now. I coached with the U20 national team over the summer, and I've coached Ohio State Fever this is my 11th season with them. So as much as I was an Ultimate player and that was where my passion is now with the coaching. So when you coach a team like Fever, you get to learn some really nice dance moves. This is for you, Henry. I just learned that this last weekend, so I keep practicing. So we're going to have a good time tonight. We're very excited to hear thoughts, ideas, challenges, concerns, all of that. We've got a very aggressive agenda, but I think you're going to like a lot of what you see and hear, and we're going to enjoy hearing back from you. I want to introduce a couple of people from staff. We have Josh Murphy and Stacy Waldrop. And Tom Crawford is here, so they're in from Colorado Springs. And then representing the board is myself and, of course, Henry Thorne and Kathy Hendrickson, raising the hand there. Great, thanks. So yeah, we're excited. And I think we're going to start off with Henry is going to get this thing in motion.
Thank you, Deanna. Let me tell you, first I have to introduce myself. I'm Henry Thorne. I married a Ultimate playing woman, Karen Thorne, and we had 2 Ultimate playing kids, one of which is right there, Max and Alex. I am a believer, which means I believe Ultimate makes the world a better place. I love it. I think it's incredibly fun. I think it's more fun than most anything. And I think the way we play builds great community and character. And I think it's freaking great. I'm just a believer. Hey, not just me. Okay, good. So, every 5 years we get out here and try and figure out what you want. And fundamentally, you all have a huge amount of power. You are getting to make the call tonight and tell us your perspective on where you want Ultimate to go over the next 5 years. And you get to do that actually more often than not, in that you elect board members like me, and you can pick us based on, you think that person's going to do the things you would want them to do. So you get to make the call a lot, but right now is a big call because USAU at headquarters every day makes a bunch of decisions and turns the crank and makes Ultimate happen in a massive way around the country. But they do it according to the policies that the board sets. And the board sets the policies based on what we think you want. And so we have to get your perspective. So we're out here right now finding out, what's your call on this? What's your perspective on this call? And the board had 13 big issues we thought were sort of the biggest things that have changed over the last 5 years. The biggest issues in front of us that we need to make tough decisions on. We picked the top 6, the ones that we thought were the highest priority. And we're going to be talking about, we're actually narrowed it down to 4 tonight because there aren't that many of you. 6 might get a little sparse. So we're going to talk about the 4 biggest areas that we need your perspective on to make decisions about what we're going to do over the next 5 years. So that's what's going to happen. How it's going to happen is I'm going to skip the small group exercise we were about to do because you were all engaged in talking just a few minutes ago. We don't need to do that. In a minute, I'm going to stop talking and you're going to see a 5-minute video about the last 50 years. So it just frames up how we got here. And then you're going to hear from Dr. Tom Crawford because he has a perspective on sports in general that is informative. And we're going to learn about that. That's why we hired him. Then we're going to break out into these groups and we're going to discuss the tough topics. And those tough topics are gender equity, semi-pro, how do we interact with them? We're going to skip elite level play because we don't think it's as important, but we're going to talk about the Olympic dream because we need your feedback on what that means to you. Does it mean as much as we think it does? And youth, because youth is our future. So we're going to talk about those 4 things in breakout groups. Then we're going to get together and just go over the smattering of what all the big thoughts were that people had, and then we're going to have a long Q&A session where we get to talk about where's all this going. So With that, we'll go into the 5-minute setup video of where we've come from. This is culminating in the 50-year anniversary of Ultimate, which is next year. And at Nationals next year, we're going to be revealing this strategic plan that we're asking you questions about tonight, and celebrating the last 50 years and setting the plan for the next 50 years. So that is why that video is about the last 50 years. You should make plans to go to Nationals next year. It's in San Diego, and be a part of the 50-year anniversary celebration of Ultimate. So, okay, 5 years ago, the board decided that we should join the world of sports. In Ultimate, we had kind of been on our own little road doing our thing, and we loved it, and we weren't sure we wanted to combine with the rest of sports. But we decided actually there was enough to be gained that we should do that. We thought we could learn from the other sports, we could probably grow faster, we thought we didn't have to sacrifice anything about our culture to do that. And we actually thought we could take what we have in sports and tell other sports and show other sports what we're doing, and that it would be good for them and might make a difference. So we simultaneously were looking for a CEO, and a guy came along with an incredible sports resume. And we got together with this guy, and he had the same mind we did about what sports were about, which was changing lives, making lives better, making the world a better place, having fun, all the things we love about Ultimate. And so we thought this could actually really work. So the guy, Dr. Tom Crawford, happens to have a PhD in high-performance athletics and psychology. He was hired out of college by the U.S. Olympic Committee to go study high-performance sports centers around the world and bring back the best of Germany and Russia and all these other places and what they do for their athletes, and make sure we had that in our Olympic program. He created the coaching ethics code for the U.S. Olympic Committee. And these are just a few things. He also was a consultant to the NBA, the NHL, and the NFL. So this is a guy that understands the sports landscape, and he's been working with us now for 5 years. And he's going to tell you some of the stuff that we've been learning that's important to understand where we are and what we're doing.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me if I use this instead of the other mic? Cool? Great. I want to reiterate the thanks. Thanks to all the local help that we got. That was fantastic pulling this together for us. Really appreciate that. And thanks to all of you for taking the time to come out tonight. I'm going to try to zip through some stuff really quick, but first I wanted to just sort of reflect a little bit on what Henry said, tell you a little bit about me and why I'm doing this and why I'm excited to be doing it. So I have had a really lucky and cool experience and career in sports, working in all of the ways that Henry just described. And I've been doing it for a long time. And through all of that experience, I have seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of sports. And some of it is amazingly good, and some of it is amazingly ugly. And I'm not going to go into any detail about any of those things. But I always believed, partially because of how I grew up, that, and I still believe this really strongly, that sports can enhance human existence in really, really powerful ways, if it's done right. Because I've seen the ugly, I also know that sports can have very detrimental effect on human beings if it's done wrong. And so based on all of that experience and all of the cool opportunities that I've had, I found out about Ultimate through a niece. And despite all those 20-some years of experience, I have to be really honest, I knew nothing about it, other than seeing discs flying around at every one of our family gatherings. I really didn't know anything about the sport. And so my niece and a nephew-in-law kind of convinced me to check it out. So I did. And when I saw it up close, in person, and it was at a pretty high-level tournament that I went to do my research, I was literally blown away. Because in one day, after all those years of experience across all those different kinds of sports, in one day, I said, this is the coolest sport I have ever seen. Because right there on this field of play were amazing athletes, quickness, speed, agility, cognitive acuity on almost every play right there, and fierce pursuit of victory by these highly competitive teams, but in a spirit and an atmosphere that I had never seen before. And I'm honest, I'm looking for the refs, I'm looking for the people that are going to intervene to solve the problems, I'm looking for all the stuff I'm used to seeing, and it's not there, but all of the beauty of sport was there. And I was like, wow. But how come I know nothing about it? Right? All I'd done my whole life is sports, and I didn't know anything about Ultimate. So that's when I met with Henry and the board at that time, and I said, I'd love to try to take this on, because you have got an amazing thing in this sport. But there's a bunch of people, like most, that really don't even know that it exists. And what a shame. Because it can be, I believe sports can be, I've seen it, it can be transformative in people's lives. I've seen it change whole families in approach to life, happiness and joy. So I got fired up and said, let's try to get Ultimate to be known by lots and lots of people and played by lots and lots of people, particularly kids, because it can change people's lives. And that's why I'm so excited and enthused and so lucky to have the job that I have right now. What I want to try to do quickly tonight is sort of give you a quick snapshot of where we fit in the world of sports that is a little different than the history and tradition of Ultimate, so that it can help frame and give some context to the conversations that you all have for the rest of the evening and all of the input that you give us. And maybe answer some questions. So Stacey, if we can get zipped into That just shows my age. Anybody even know where that song came from? Very few people probably recognize that. That was like that was the music to sports when I was growing up. That every time you turned on sports on that particular network, everybody knew that song by heart. Okay, got to remind everybody of our mission. This is always really important context to have for the discussions you're going to have tonight. Our mission is to advance the sport of Ultimate in the United States by enhancing and promoting character, community, and competition. And our vision, which could change, but our vision right now is that it's widely known, played, and respected in the United States as a sport that inspires athletic excellence and integrity amongst both the participants and the fans. It's a pretty big vision, but that's our vision right now as we go forward. Let me just explain the structure that we now exist in, and I'll do this first with this slide, and then we'll zip through a few more to play it out a little bit more. But this is sort of the pyramid of sport that we are operating in. And I wanted to be sure that you had this context. So at the very top is the International Olympic Committee. And the International Olympic Committee is really the body in the world of sport that is responsible for trying to drive the health and growth of sport all over the world. And they are a big, huge organization, and they're made up of groups like WIFTF, our international federation, as well as national Olympic committees, which for us is the United States Olympic Committee. And then, so that's sort of the top of the pyramid, all of the really important work, and then you have the national governing body, so that's us. And then you have where all of the really important work happens and all of the really cool stuff happens, which is right here in Pittsburgh or Ohio. That's where all of the real meaningful stuff that happens in sports happens. But let me walk you through this super quick. Stacey, if we can start zipping through. IOC I described. Under the IOC, WIFTF. So WIFTF functions just like other organizations you may have heard of. So WIFTF is our FIFA, FIBA, International Volleyball Federation. There's a whole bunch of these federations that are part and make up the International Olympic Committee. WIFTF is now one of them. That was a big step for the sport of ultimate, that WIFDF is right up there with the rest of those international federations. The other major component of the International Olympic Committee are the National Olympic Committees. So every country has their National Olympic Committee. Here it's the United States Olympic Committee. You can see all of the others. That's the groups that make up the International Olympic Committee. And the United States Olympic Committee and WIFDF and us all have to work together within this structure. But here's what I want you to understand about the Olympic dream and what we're pursuing and where the real value is. In the United States, unlike a lot of other countries, the United States Olympic Committee is also our Ministry of Sport. Congress made a decision back in the 70s not to have a Ministry of Sport and an Olympic Committee like many other countries have. So in the United States Olympic Committee is our Ministry of Sport. A lot of people think of the United States Olympic Committee as that's the group that sends Michael Phelps and all of the track and field athletes off to the summer games and that's what they do. But that's not true in the United States. All of these groups are members of the United States Olympic Committee. And the real value of us getting to be part of the Olympic family is reflected right there. If you look at all of the organizations that we now are aligned with and get to interact with, it can have a really positive impact on how we can grow Ultimate. And I'll give you one specific example. How many of you have heard of PAL? Anybody know when I say PAL? Police Athletic Leagues. Anybody ever heard of the Police Athletic Leagues? All over the United States, there are police athletic leagues that function in almost every city. And what it is police officers go into communities, typically challenged communities, tough communities, and they use sports to try to have a positive impact on kids while they simultaneously try to develop positive relationships with kids. Just think about where we are in our society right now, what an incredibly powerful thing that could be, where police officers are playing with kids, teaching kids, and using sports to teach them all kinds of things about life. In a couple of weeks, a few of us are going to the PAL National Conference as the featured sport because at the last Olympic meeting, they learned about us for the first time. And they were like, wow, built-in conflict resolution, spirit of the game ethos, where everybody respects each other, gets along with each other, it's really inexpensive, and most important of all, it's wicked fun. This is what we can play it on a street, we can play it in a gym, we can play it in any neighborhood where we do our work. You got to come in and tell everybody about this. That's the power of being in the Olympic family. They're all going to be introducing Ultimate to kids all over the country to try to address some really big issues. That's, I think, incredibly cool. That's one example. There's a bunch of other ones out there. One other one I wanted to point out so that people realize the scope of the Olympic Committee is you see the NCAA, the National Collegiate Athletic Association, is part of the Olympic Committee. They're at all of these meetings. We already have a commitment from the Olympic Committee that if we continue to make progress like we have been, getting on not just the World Games, but the World Beach Games and then perhaps the Olympic Games, they'll go hand in hand with us to the NCAA and say, this is your next women's emerging sport. You got to get a conference or two to adopt this sport. This is your next sport. And then who knows where that will go. That's the power of being part of the Olympic family, not just the Olympic Games. That has a lot to it as well, but that's not really the main purpose of being in that family. Okay, Stacey? Then you got the national governing body, so we function just like USA Rugby, like hockey, like swimming. That's our job. That's where we fit in the structure. Next. I wanted to give you a quick peek about how we're doing, because a lot of people find this pretty interesting. Here's how we're doing relative to some other sports. We're at 55,000 members. We're growing at about 4.5% to 5% a year. Other sports are ahead of us. So you got swimming as an example. They're actually, last time I checked, getting up close to 450 to 500,000 members, growing at about 9%. They get a huge boost after the Olympic Games. Their membership just shoots up because kids all over the place go to mom and dad and say, I want to be that fast. That looks really fun. And mom and dad say, and you're going to learn how to swim and you're not going to drown? Yeah, let's go to the pool. That sounds like a really good idea. Rugby is now taking off because of their involvement in the Olympic program. They used to be right with us. Really, we were aligned in terms of our size and growth, and now they're taken off because they were lucky enough to get on the Olympic program. Lacrosse is booming. Interestingly enough, last year they didn't for the first time because they're growing too fast. 450,000 members, they can't keep up with the growth, so they went flat because they can't build structures fast enough to keep up with the demand. Interesting challenge to have. And then volleyball, the reason I love to include this is because I got a question. So California is like one of the big hot spots for volleyball. In California right now, take a guess at this. For every boy that joins volleyball and starts playing volleyball, guess how many girls join volleyball and start playing volleyball? 2, 3, 4. Gotta keep going. For every one boy that joins volleyball, 10 girls are joining and playing volleyball in one state, just to give you one example. Lots of stuff we can learn from them, and we are. So that's a quick snapshot of how we're doing relative to others. Just want to remind everybody that USA Ultimate is made up of a lot of different people doing a lot of different things, including, probably most importantly of all, a huge number of volunteers that do an amazing amount of work to help the sport grow and thrive. And we couldn't do anything without all of those people helping us. And Pittsburgh is a great example of a bunch of people doing a lot of fabulous work. But there's a lot of groups that we're trying to help and keep an eye on. Ultimate Foundation, this is new. This is going to help fund a lot of the important programs that we really want to drive. So I would say when you get in your group on youth, for example, we are going to try to start driving some new funding into our youth programs outside of our operating budget by asking people for help really for the first time. And we think we're going to have a lot of success with this. We're also going to take some of the funding and drive it down to the state-based organizations, which we just started building, because we're starting to build an infrastructure to grow the sport like those other sports that you just saw. So keep an eye on this. This will be an interesting development going forward. And then we have our state organizations, and then we have the really important work with all of you, the local disc organizations that just do all of the really, really important stuff. And we're developing our affiliates all across the country that are now going to be part of the state organizations. And again, the idea is to build this structure so that we can end up not having the problem lacrosse has, which they can't keep up with their growth. We're kind of trying to get ahead of it a little bit so that we're ready for the big influx of kids that we think we're going to continue to have, and we're ready to just grow and grow and grow. And as you know here, it's all about the teams, it's about the programs, it's about the leagues, and we hope that it's about hosting our events so that all of that comes together at the local level, and there's a ton of activity, and our job is really to help local disc organizations and groups create all of this activity locally, and we all grow together. But I guess if there's one real important message for me is let's do this together. Let's do this together, because we got to catch those other sports so that a bunch of kids can learn about the coolest sport on the planet. So let's do it together. I think that's it. I just want to zip through the rest. That's it. Good?
Okay, yeah, great. So for 5 or 10 minutes, let's talk about how USAU and the local org, hey Dave, are interacting, and whether this model and structure that you're seeing up there is helping Pittsburgh Ultimate or not. What could help Pittsburgh Ultimate more? How do you interact with that model? And any other questions you have for Tom about what you just saw about the sort of wider world of sports that we're part of. So I'm going to give you a pregnant pause while you think about your potential questions for Tom on all that. And if nobody has anything, we'll move into the group work. But yeah. Can somebody describe the affiliate program? So we'll go to Josh. Yes, Josh can. You ready?
The affiliate program, you saw sort of a list of our current affiliates. It's basically the program to connect local disc associations to this structure. So we put the pyramid back up there. It's the way we want to see teams, programs, and events sort of be organized now, but really especially in the future, really connecting things. A lot of times now, even players, but especially these teams and events, skip over local levels and go straight to the national level. So affiliates are basically organizations that commit to sanctioning all of their events, is sort of the shorthand way to describe them. And yeah, we think it's the future. I think the challenges are figuring out like a model that's flexible for huge organization, medium organization, nascent, brand new organization.
So Christy, not to put you on the spot, but is that working for you?
So we're not an affiliate as an organization, nor as a state, but we do affiliate with individual leagues and tournaments and programs. So it works for us individually, but we have found as a local org, based on mostly like insurance and just some other logistical things, that it makes more sense for us to remain not an affiliate, but to use USA Ultimate for individual programs.
Okay, any other thoughts on Pittsburgh Ultimate and how the connection to USAU is working or not working? This is your chance if you have a complaint. Susan.
Thank you, Henry. And thank you for the presentation also, Tom. Okay, more volume. So not necessarily Pittsburgh specific, but I'm just wondering in terms of USA Ultimate providing resources to local organizations and maybe making them aware of the resources available. Is there any kind of assessment tool, like a needs assessment tool, that the organization has considered making available for local organizations to understand where maybe they are compared to other organizations around the country?
Consulting service that has the statistics.
I think we could do better with that in terms of formally having a needs assessment. What we do with all of the affiliate and state organizations is they come in every year to the US Open, and we have basically a convention. And it's like a best practices convention. So there's a lot of learning that goes on. There's a lot of sharing of data, programs that have worked, haven't worked. And yes, we do talk about, we're really strong in this area, we're not so strong over here, what should we do? And it helps them kind of identify their strengths and weaknesses. So we do that annually, but we don't do it in the form of a needs assessment, and that's a really good idea. Josh, isn't that a really good idea?
That's not like a tool on it, that's probably not going to catch the key. Coming up with something that's really a working tool, and not just say we're doing that's better.
Anybody else? Nick.
I'm not sure if this is for Christy or for everyone on the affiliate thing. Are there, so we administrate, are not a state or local affiliate. We are affiliating each one of our separate leagues. Or some. Are there benefits we're missing out on in doing it that way? Or would USA Ultimate prefer us to be a full affiliate? And if so, what more can be done to convince us to do that? I don't think that makes sense.
No, I think it does make sense. You won't be surprised that the answer is that we would love to see you be an affiliate. And at some point, we will have a state organization here. The way we're rolling them out now, because we want to grow the right way, carefully, and scale appropriately, is we're rolling about 3 to 4 per year. We just started this last year. The benefits are, for the state organizations, are pretty significant amount of money that we just give the state organization. So it's like a little venture funding. So we give them, for 3 years, pretty big grants to get rolling. We give them a lot of attention and a lot of other resources. And then they also, it's a profit sharing model. Not profit, but it's a revenue sharing model, where from that point on, what we do is we help them build a business model that is initial 3 years and then sustainability, and we help them build it out literally with a P&L for a local organization to be able to go from not existing to become, so for example, we help them become 501c3s. We get them D&O insurance, a whole variety of things so they become a legitimate organization, 501c3. They have to put a board together that makes sense. And then we give them funding, we give them advice, and we help them achieve a lot of those things, including building a business plan for ultimate sustainability. So we think there are a lot of benefits, and we think we have to do that to ultimately have the structure we need to grow the sport and scale it the way we can and could.
Kathy?
Just to clarify, that's the state organization. So we have worked with affiliates for a long time, and now the emphasis is going to be a state organization. And the question is, who's going to get that up? So that I think is.
Yeah, and a lot of the state organizations are evolving out of an affiliate. So Minnesota is a great example. They were an affiliate. When they heard about the state organization initiative, they were like, we really want to do that. We want to start looking all over the state, not just in Minneapolis, to help grow all over the state. So they formed a new board, became a new 501c3. We're now giving them grants, and we're sharing revenue, and we have a couple that are doing really well. I mean, they're really taking off.
So if we jump in early, can we take over and Philly after this?
Yes. Yeah. No, just,
Baseball states in Philly, they're all here.
well, we would hope that it would be more of a cooperative relationship.
We'll give them 1 out of 3 years.
And we would require, by the way, that if there were good communities like Philly with a lot going on, they'd have a seat on the board, right? They would have a strong voice in the health of the sport growing in that state. That's the way the boards kind of get put together.
Is there a reason that you guys ultimately decided to do a state organization versus something more like a traditional regional organization?
Excellent question, and the answer is we're doing both. So, like for example, because it fit better, you'll notice that one of them that we have right now is New England Ultimate. So we didn't want to have Rhode Island and Connecticut and Massachusetts because it didn't make sense. So we now have New England Ultimate that is working in all of those states. So their board is made up of Rhode Islanders and people from Connecticut and Massachusetts, and they're getting together and trying to figure out how to grow the sport best in that region. And we're going to do that in others for sure. We probably end up with maybe 30, not 50. So we're trying. And by the way, our goal is we fully recognize that what's going to happen in New England is going to look way different than what's going to happen in California or Texas. So we have certain parameters that we like to see get put in place for these organizations, but then we say, be entrepreneurial. You figure it out. We don't know. We're in Colorado Springs. We have no idea how to make this community thrive the way all of you do. We want to just provide resources and advice and then best practices. And I love your idea, by the way. Needs assessments so other groups can say, here's why we should or shouldn't do it. And push it all down so that the great ideas that you're all going to start talking about take hold here and in other communities, but it all can look different. Because there's no way that California is going to look like Florida. They're going to have different ultimate communities. So the idea is to stimulate the growth of a community of communities all over the United States.
And Tom's got all sorts of ideas about that you could go on all night. Yes, we need to move on, but quick questions? Yeah? You sure? Okay. You look like you really want to ask your question. Why don't you go ahead?
What?
So I'm a parent, and thinking the state is still, after several years, still very ad hoc in some ways. You would say most of them work more on structure, permanent structure.
And just so you know, that's our biggest challenge all over the United States, is building a youth structure that really works. I think it's going to look different everywhere, depending on number of kids. Are they in the high schools? The sport's starting to get adapted now by some high schools and turning them into varsity sports. That's going to look really different if that's true in one state versus another state. But yeah, the idea is, I'm not allowed to do this? So the idea is, this is the simple formula for success in sports, is that we build a structure where
I've seen this like 20 times, but it's good.
I want everybody to, this is so simple, but this is the key. These are the athletes or the kids, right? These are coaches. You got to have coaches when you have kids to have good programs, developmental programs. So what we have to build all over the United States is this structure. It's this simple. I know this looks very scientific, and I need everybody to do this really quick, please, just so you never forget the very famous finger model of sports. This young kid, this child, this really cool human being needs a coach that knows and is able to do enough to get that child to that next level if they want to go there. Where there's another coach that knows and is able to do a little bit more than this coach to get that human being, that really cool kid, to this level if they want to go there. Where there's another coach that knows and is able to do a little bit more so that they can help that athlete and human being get to this level if they want to, where there's an amazing coach that can help them go win a gold medal at the World Games. And we don't have that structure yet. We don't. And mostly where we don't have it is down here, where we need a bunch of you, when you quit playing this silly game, to become coaches. So you can go out and teach the sport to kids and build this part of the structure. And that's what we're helping all of these organizations do, is really focus on that, so that kids can have that developmental experience.
Great. Okay, now we're going to go into working groups to go over the big issues. And there are 5 of them. We're actually skipping one tonight, but we're going to go. Youth structure, the one that you just brought up, is going to be over here. And so when you get there, there's a facilitator there that will read you sort of the frame up and then the big question that we're grappling with there. Semi-pro ultimate, how should we be interacting, will be right here. In the back is the Olympic dream. Anybody who wants to learn more about it or has questions about it, maybe there's sacrifices you're worried about, that is going to be back there. Tom will be manning that one. Susan, you and Vivek, you are at the diversity and equity table. That doesn't mean you have to stay there, but that is where that will be, and that is one of the bigger topics we've got right now. And then there's branding, which is, what should we stand for? And so that's going to be over here. So take a couple minutes, look around, go settle yourself in one of those 5 areas, and then we'll get going. You're going to have a half an hour to talk about it, and then we'll have 10 minutes to figure out where everybody's converging and where people are diverging. Where are we not agreeing? Where are we agreeing?
That will ensure competitive opportunities, continued growth, and retention into adulthood. And what we're going to try to do through the discussion here is to come up with a few areas that folks sort of agree on, few areas that they don't agree on, and that's what we'll present to the greater group. Does that sound all right?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Coaching structure needed, we're having, the hard part is getting the people at the bottom to come lead them. So instead of splitting teams into like 15, 20 where they could get play time and have fun, you have to, like, one leader has to have 40, and he can't play 40 kids. And it's hard to keep them excited, so the next year they disappear. Especially with the female high school coaches. They give big rosters, but you never see the same girls multiple years. You see 30, they get 10 new ones, they get 10 new ones, and how do you retain more of them? That way the Moxie team builds, which is the girls' club team.
You look like you're having a different experience. Where are your kids playing?
At Kappa.
Okay, which is right next door.
Right, it's not necessarily different. Yeah, they play on the roof. Yeah. But what I've seen, so my twin daughter started the team at Kappa, and this is Kathleen's not my daughter. Anyway, Miranda, her sister, who's 6, so she couldn't be here. And just what I see is that there's no structure at CPU. They don't set the games. They do find fields now, and they'll sort of help with the coaches. But I'm really worried that Kappa's team is just going to die after Miranda and Sophia leave, when they have 18 girls signed up who are interested, and that seems like a real shame. But there's nothing there except for, I mean, I shouldn't say nothing, that, there's not that much there except for what they've put into it. And that seems hard, and I think it also is a hard sell then to parents in terms of, not everyone likes this word legitimacy, but, if you go to your, you're like, oh, look, I'm on this team, I want money, oh, what are the games? Oh, I don't know, we just kind of decide, and we go to this field, and I think to get parent buy-in, if, again, there was like, CPU organize this, and here's what the games are. But really what I've seen is just the stress on them and their teammates from other schools, that it's a lot of pressure to have to manage the whole high school season themselves.
I've seen this happen in some other schools as well, where the team disintegrates after the leaders graduate. And I found that it was particularly difficult for the high schoolers themselves to self-organize, or for their coaches to help them organize when there was no support from within school administration and faculty or advocates. So what I'd like to see, I guess, is for either CPU or USAU to facilitate more in-school advocacy from a staff member. Like, as a volunteer coach, I can only do so much. The high schoolers shouldn't have to do everything themselves. But without a staff member to be there within the school system to help them, I feel like we're really losing a lot of traction.
They've had kids. We use the teachers who are in the school and their kids play, and that's kind of our bridge into the school and help gives us clearance. We don't have an official capacity, but that at least gives us a little bit of grace in the door.
Do you think that for the smaller schools, and I think this just kind of tackles both of your qualms, I guess, is that do you think it's possible to create conglomerate teams within the youth structure between schools for schools that already have established coaches or established teams, so that you can kind of combine resources for schools with less?
I think it has to be allowed at least sometime. I mean, perhaps there are rules to prevent certain conglomerates from having an unfair competitive advantage, but I've seen so many kids who don't have enough at their school and who really want to play.
2 of the top players are the Keith brothers and Shaler. They don't have a team. They're 2 of the best players in Pittsburgh right now.
So yeah, that's,
if you play together.
Do you think that's a potential solution to talk about?
We talked about doing that with Alderdice, but then they each ended up getting enough players.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a thought for schools. I mean, I come from, when I played in high school once upon a time, me and my friends were in charge of everything. So I guess I have that perspective. But we were told by the school that we weren't officially associated with them. So, I mean, I never really thought about it then because we had enough players, but that program no longer exists. So, I mean, we weren't tied to the school, I guess is my point. So, I mean, is that something that CPU allows? I don't actually know the answer to that question.
I know we've heard that problem from a couple of schools. I think like Chartiers Valley, I don't know if that's the specific school, but one of the schools told the club team that they couldn't use the school's mascot.
Yeah.
You know,
we were the lightning bolts.
Yeah. So you had to become a different entity, completely, you know, severing your mental and school spirit.
Right. I mean, I didn't care as a high schooler, but
you probably liked it.
Right.
Going back to the in-school advocate, like you said, whenever your school doesn't even recognize your club team as a representative of the school student body, you know, it's hard to find that staff member that would encourage and spend much time and money.
Elliot, I want to go back to what Jenna was saying, and you touched on a little bit. So I think there could be better facilitating and better outreach done by the league or you know, people acting on behalf of the league as representatives of the league to approach administrators, to approach principals or athletic directors and say, like, this is an actual sport, it's interscholastic, it's competitive. Southwestern PA is WPIAL-centric, right? I mean, everything's WPIAL and then PIAA. But there's other sports that, at the high school I coach, there's other sports that are recognized as varsity sports, but they're non-WPIAL sports. Ice hockey is a non-WPIAL sport. Rugby is a non-WPIAL sport. Crew is a non-WPIAL sport. Programs that are pretty, you know, established. Rugby's fairly new, but you know, the fencing team. You know, all these. I want to even think. No, I think golf is WPIAL, but sports that aren't sort of that you know, conventional establishment, you know, WPIAL sphere. They're non-WPIAL sports, but they've at least attained recognition of being a sport, being interscholastic, being competitive, being, you know, something you can letter in. You know, it's a varsity sport. It's recognized. I think that's where, you know, CPU and then housed under CPU pool could step up to the occasion and kind of do a little bit more to maybe, you know, act as a go-between and help approach some school districts and administrations and so forth and say, you know, these are actual sports. You know, how can you help students in your school who want to compete and represent their school? And I think that's a big selling point. They want to represent your school in interscholastic competition. How can you, school board or, you know, administrators or whatever, how can you make that happen in your school district? It's a less. Yeah, and bowling's a non-WPIAL sport. It has its own separate statewide league.
I was going to say, I've approached various people in the public schools, and I've talked to people who have the power to help make sports, varsity sports, in various conferences or whatever, WPIAL league or whatever. And it's a really tough sell because basically you're asking them to take on a whole bunch more work, right? I don't think they're going to be motivated to really help us set up a league until they simply can't ignore us. I think there have to be so many grassroots
keep knocking on the doors,
groups, and then we keep knocking on the doors. I don't think we're there yet. I think we need to keep that in view. But I think the things we can do over the next 5 years, I mean, we need to make it really easy for youth ultimate enthusiasts to set up their own teams.
When we became successful, they became more appreciative that we existed.
Right.
So we got on announcements, we got in the yearbook, they were at graduation.
Well, just if I can finish, yeah. I mean, two things. Can you imagine, say, a website where a high school player can go and put in all the information he needs so that everybody else on the team can sign up? And maybe it helps them collect dues from their members. If the high school player who's motivated to do this knows that there are resources coming down from USA Ultimate, it's going to make it much easier for them to take care of a lot of the administrative things that need to be done. I think the key to that is really, really good website design. I've struggled with Ultimate Central's web interface, for example. It's really, really, for me, been very difficult. But a drop-dead simple thing that says, we're going to help you set up a team. My son is organizing his high school team using Group. And when the time comes to collect dues, he's tearing his hair out because it's so complicated. But a little bit of intelligent website design can make it really easy to set up a team. And then there's a second problem, which is how do you help teams sustain themselves when the real movers and shakers graduate, like Miranda's going to do soon from Kappa. And I think some good planning needs to go into that. How do you transfer leadership and bring in new people to keep these places alive? I mean, we're not going to save everyone. Teams are going to form, and some of them are going to dissolve, and we need to expect a certain amount of that. All we can do is sort of whittle away at making it easier to set up, making them more likely to sustain themselves, and give it time.
Yeah, I guess the sort of rap I've heard from CPU is it's really good for these high school students to set up their own teams and run the league, and their responsibility, blah, 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 whatever. The problem is then that the feeling is if the team dies, it's because the players weren't committed enough rather than that there wasn't any kind of investment and it's just an incredible amount of pressure to put on high school students who are going to be gone in 4 years. So I think we have to get rid of that idea that like, no, these students really benefit from setting up their own league. Maybe they do, but the continuity, I mean, I don't think they do necessarily from what I've seen, but even if they do, the continuity of the teams suffers tremendously because then there's nothing there to keep the team going.
Just the student, one, it's a lot of pressure to do all the little stuff to go into it, and you're burnt out before you even got, like we just did registrations, you're getting 20-some kids to do USAU, Pittsburgh. We had 700 glitches that I was even with tech support because none of the IDs matched. And it wouldn't populate on the thing, and like you're having a student do that, it's going to be a week.
Is this something that those state organizations can do?
Hopefully. Okay. You know what I mean? Like it would be better, I think, if state organizations could tackle the problems that exist in their state.
Okay.
That's the goal.
Is related to like transportation and field issues and all kinds of things that basically students are going to run into no matter what because they don't have their own credit card, they don't have their cars. A lot of that is just happens with high school teams, but if we had resources to provide fields that would fit and centrally located for all the high schoolers to use at a certain time slot, like these are huge asks, but they would go a long way to
I see a parallel with, again, established sports that the school I teach at and coach at. Established sports, they each sort of have like their own parent booster group, right? And as the kids graduate through, there's always going to be turnover in the parent booster group, right? So you're going to have turnover in a team as after 3 or 4 years the players graduate out. They sort of pass the torch down to the younger kids and hope that the younger kids step up and so maybe kind of finding some common ground between here's the players that are really active and involved and dedicated and passionate about it, get their parents on board, and then you can kind of hand it down as you're handing it to the next generation of players, also hand it from parents to parents, that, you know, sort of the next parents coming up of the younger players. That might kind of help give a little bit of support where you need that adult presence. So it's not all just on the kids.
Yeah, but we're getting people, sometimes they're joining as like a second semester junior, and they're with you a year, and they're gone before they have a chance to take on the leadership or even know what they're taking over. That's why I'm trying to trickle into the middle school. They know what they're getting into, and thank goodness that airplane did great this week.
We also don't all work with schools that have an engaged parent base. So, and for a lot of kids from some of the schools that are struggling right now, it's because they don't have involved parents. And they're also the ones who don't have enough funding to pay to go to states or whatever all those requirements are to be fully operational in the state. So, even though you have problems, I mean, you guys are especially lucky to have parents.
Quick question, when we say youth, we mean high school and lower, right? Middle school and summer camps also, is that right?
Yeah.
One thing I've noticed as my sons have come up through middle school into high school is that it gets a heck of a lot easier for them when they get old enough to drive. That's kind of a threshold, right? Middle school ultimate leagues are really hard to sustain because kids need to be carded everywhere. High school teams often have a few drivers who can get the team there, and that reduces the need for parental involvement. So I think we're actually looking at two quite different problems. How do you sustain middle school leagues, and how do you sustain high school leagues? Somewhat different structures need to be in place for the two.
Are you finding that, going back to Tom's mechanism, that the coaches are there that need to be there? I know a lot of you coach, and is there continuity to the coaching?
I mean, my experience was a team that dissolved out from under me as a committed coach. So that's one example, and it's often not the case. But our school just didn't have a lot of involvement, and before being able to really build a program, we graduated with a bunch of people at once. And between myself and the boys coach, we weren't able to do much about it. And CPU is stretched so thin that there weren't a lot of resources there to help us facilitate that as an operator.
There's probably a half dozen schools that are blessed to have coaches on a regular basis.
His team was all, he's a high-level player, very committed to coaching, and his team just sort of fell apart. They couldn't make schedule work, they didn't have enough people to be going.
Where a school has a faculty member who's an ultimate enthusiast and wants to coach, that really helps with continuity a lot. Every time my son's high school needs a coach, they turn to Christy, the local organizer, and Christy says, "I'll see if I can find somebody for you." And she usually comes up with somebody. But at the end of the year, it's like starting from scratch all over again, right? So finding one-year volunteer coaches is great, but in terms of creating a program that has momentum and enthusiasm that carries over from one year to the other, we haven't figured that out yet.
Yeah, don't expect to get the same volunteer a couple of years. But I have an extremely strong relationship because I've known some of these kids for 4 years now. Now I'm getting their brothers and their younger sisters. As their parents already know what they're getting with me, good or bad. They know what they're getting.
Is there anything that USA Ultimate can do to incentivize coaches to, I guess, retain coaches in the youth scene?
It's a good question. It's sort of kind of what we're wondering. What ideas do you guys have for stuff like that?
I don't know. I mean, as a player, I see just having my membership, I guess, with USA Ultimate. I find it strange that I pay more for my coaching membership than I would for just a normal USAU membership. So I think subsidizing that.
Do you mean the coach and player combo membership?
Okay. I just find that strange that because USA Ultimate could subsidize that because you would just be lost revenue, not really that you're paying for anything extra. But I mean, you would have to incentivize that as saying okay, well, this would happen for the following year if you did it for a full year or something like that. It's sort of I don't want to say a contract, but I don't know. I think it's really interesting what you guys are doing with the developmental for women's college, and I think I don't want to say doing something that's exactly similar to that at a youth scene. But I think I would be more driven as an individual to try and reach out to a school board or to some sort of school official to really push for something if there was a carrot, I guess, that I could chase. Does anyone else have any thoughts on that?
So I don't know how well known it is, but for women's ultimate for college, I know there's that support package with you get discs, you get the combo, you get a few mentors who have done the same thing. I'm one of them, so
You're the mentor?
Yeah, I'm one of the mentors to a new women's college team. And so it could be really beneficial even just to have that connection, someone you can talk to who's done the exact same thing as you. Because I know a lot of captains get really frustrated because when they're put in that kind of spot where they are seeing what they built is falling apart and they just don't know how to pick up the pieces.
And you're talking about at the high school level?
Yes.
Okay.
For other players today, they feel like the coaches should be paid something.
I'm sorry?
That the coaches should be paid something, which I know is everyone's operating on a shoestring, right? But
Right.
I mean, that is one of the reasons why we have such a rotating coach base, is that it often is a college student who has time and maybe has some other random job and they don't mind giving their time to the high school players for a while, but then at some point they get a full-time job and you can't make 3 or 4 again, which is what almost all of the high school
Conceptually, pay, right? Time is money. Hey, pay sounds good. But then the question becomes, well, where are you going to get that pay from? Is that going to be coming from USA Ultimate? Is it going to come from pool? Is it going to come from the school that the team is competing for? Or and I'm against this, so I don't go this route. But are you going to build that into the player's participation fee, so that money from each player is going toward paying the coach for their time that season, like a stipend?
Teams that have paid the coaches, and they just build it into their players' fee.
And that's one way to do it.
But that's a choice per team on a per individual basis.
Yeah. I shy away from that because I don't want to take money out of my players' pockets. I'd rather.
Right. You're volunteering.
It's a labor of love. I'm paying it back. Paying it forward. It's.
Especially because a lot of these teams are trying to fundraise too at the same time.
Oh yeah.
Right, and it's just the question of at what point does that philosophy, which is great, right, like volunteer organization, become limiting to the continuity and the stability of the organization. That's really the trade-offs. But I also know money doesn't. Someone has to find that money. So.
And I don't know, again, if you can set it up where it's pool paying out coaches, if there's a conflict of interest there, or there's like a business ethic or whatever, and likewise being a nonprofit organization to pay out coaches, so then it would fall to each school being convinced to pay a coach position, and some schools might not be for it.
Then it would just inflate the registration fee, which would be the same thing as the players paying for it. It would just be in a more indirect way.
Indirect.
The non-repeal sports at Central schools, do the schools pay the coaches?
They get a stipend from the athletic department, which again is budgeted through the school's fiscal year. Yeah. So that, but again, and that route goes back to you got to get it to be recognized as a sport by the school. It has to be supported by however they want to classify it. It's an activity, it's a club sport, it's a, whatever, but as long as the school is saying, we're behind this because the team is competing and representing us as a school, and that can be, that's where the convincing has to come in, and I think that could be, that could be varied across school districts or across, schools. That could be tough.
Do you know what, say, a high school volleyball or wrestling coach, what kind of stipend do schools afford? Ballpark?
You're not, maybe a couple $1,000s a season, I don't know.
I think it's from just the trope, big quad ace group, I guess it's 5A now. I think it was like a couple thousand per sport per season.
Well, the thing that strikes me about that is amazingly low. That seems to me far more achievable than I had expected, right? And it suggests to me, I think you need a little bit of infrastructure in place before you start handing out $2,000 checks, right? The school needs to, recruit 15 players or something, and then they get a paid coach for 3 years or something.
And those teams also have ridiculous booster programs that do insane work, right? So,
and the boosters, the fundraising.
So, but I guess what I'm saying is that I think within the next 5 years, we can envision stipended coaches sustaining high school programs. I think that's an achievable goal, and if the kind of support that Tom was talking about is likely to be there, we should plan for that.
But again, to make a parallel, right? The WPIAL doesn't pay all the basketball coaches in the WPIAL, right? The WPIAL doesn't pay all the football coaches in the WPIAL. It's not coming from the league.
It's school by school.
It's each school. It's school by school by school that's paying because they're setting money aside to fund a program, and they want the school to compete in that sport within the WPIAL. and then they're saying, okay, you know what, and I mean, there's the interview process, there's a hiring, there's, I mean, you hire a coaching staff or a head coach and he brings on his assistants. I mean, that's a whole structure because, the Whitfield is a 100-some-year-old league. I mean, they just celebrated their centennial a couple of years ago, right? I mean, that's an established thing, and they have pretty well set, established sports in the Whitfield. We're a little bit more up and coming, and again, that's
right.
You got to sell that to a school.
And I think that USA Ultimate, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is trying to incubate this idea and try and create it from a nonprofit and push it into the schools. So instead of coming from the schools, I guess, not sure of the word, coming from the schools themselves, but coming from, not like unorganically, is that we're just trying to not force it in, but trying to push it into the schools, is that, I mean, if there were a stipend, as you were just talking about, if that were to come from USA Ultimate, how would that be allocated? Would it be allocated based off of merit or competitiveness, where, I mean, a school may already have a coach, or would it be going to more developmental programs? So I don't know how anyone feels about that. Just throwing ideas out there.
Does USA have any kind of curriculum materials that they give to, say, middle schools or high school students, like play Ultimate, it's a really cheap game.
Well, there's
kids run around.
the packets, the learn to play packets.
Yeah.
No,
what did you say? I missed.
The like start a team at your school package where you get cones and discs
Gotcha.
and sets of rules. We've used that for some teams.
I was thinking like for gym teachers, or just, I mean, it's a very cheap sport, it's very aerobic.
I personally donated 20 discs to 2 of our middle schools this year. But those are my personal discs that I just took upon myself and decided that it was time to take them off the wall.
This is something like
Spring
at
cleaning.
the school play Ultimate. It's such a cool sport. Here's how to do it.
We have talked about doing something like that at the CPU level, like as an outreach opportunity for the community for Pittsburgh to go into schools and like work in the gym class as a route to legitimizing sport. But I think that's separate maybe from your question about like
That takes a lot of networking, contact different schools, school districts.
That's what that ERIC program did, is they came into different middle schools. One said, gym teachers said yes, they went to. The one said gym teachers said no, you're not coming. They had to just say, all right, I guess I'm not going.
There's also the gum movement. On the Girls Ultimate Movement website, they actually have the ability for you to go in and download like a one-day kind of thing to experience Ultimate, and then you can request more material, email to them specifically, like why you're inquiring about that. So it's there.
Yeah.
All right, now we have to decide on what we agree on and what we don't necessarily agree on, but like the 3 salient points from each, or if we agree on everything, we can have 5 or 6 salient points that,
I'm confident we didn't talk about yet with the college students coaching and high school. Like there's a greater turnover, but it may encourage retention in the sport if people stay in town. I know we didn't talk about retention really very much. I actually don't know if it's an issue in Pittsburgh really. I feel like people just stick to it or.
I love bringing alumni back that are on spring break. I just had to pick kids when they were in there. They come in, they play around with the younger kids. They're like, oh, these are awesome. I have Aaron Buss come back all the time. He's our local pro player that's in my local area. That's just a resource that I've created.
well, there's also the example of Riot in Seattle, the women's club team that has a public service requirement to be on the team, and that's a huge source of coaching. I don't know if anybody but Riot does that.
She comes, she's in town.
All right, so we only have a couple
Point
of
number
minutes.
1, what do we agree on? We need a structure?
Yeah, infrastructure.
Infrastructure at the high school level?
Yeah, for retention purposes.
We need school support?
A connection to the school board or the school itself.
Administration.
The administration.
School administration.
And there's a problem of seniors graduating and
Turnover.
turnover. Thank you.
Got to be able to pass the torch.
player turnover, right?
Yeah, and coach turnover. We talked about that.
Sustainability.
Yep.
I think a relatively simple mechanism just to help local groups of kids who are excited about it organize their own teams, whether it's web resources or whatever.
Hear all that, would that go along with CPU outreach and legitimizing the sport in a broader way?
It might go along with it, but I think the mechanisms are very different. I'm just talking about, just imagine what it's like to be a high school kid who's really excited about this sport. You have like 3 friends who like it too, not enough to play yet. What do you need to form a whole team, to get the parental support, to help get the team to games, fundraise, collect dues?
I think it's kind of like a do-it-yourself kit or do-it-yourself resource is kind of what you're describing, right?
Mm-hmm.
For at the high school phase of life, right?
Okay. I'm sorry.
That's a good question.
Coaches paid.
Where were we on paying coaches? Were we converged? That sounds awesome. Or were we diverged? Like we're not sure.
Yeah, I think incentives is fine.
Incentivize is probably but also could be a service requirement for club teams. Maybe they're not getting paid, but it's different incentives.
Well, I mean, and there are certain incentives that exist. I mean, I did the coaching development program, I mean, essentially for free because I coach at Pittsburgh College. But, I mean, does that exist for high schoolers too? Like high school, college? Or is it just, you're not high school, college? Yeah. Like, I got that free jacket and I didn't have to pay the $90. Yeah, that was you. Right. But is that for high school coach? Any coach? Okay. Cool.
Okay, do we go to another page? We have pages. We can do it.
Or did we get it? That's the other option. Anything else?
Maybe an infrastructure.
Like, one of them would be like, hey, we're going to play and represent you, and it's going to be awesome. Give us money. And then there was like building in the community and kind of like push its way into the school itself. And I personally like that as a tutor because it's hard to get school administrators to do anything unless it's already there. And they're like, oh wow, look how much people like this.
So like make them want it, don't try to sell them on it. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, so like I think that the resources should be poured into CPU and other club, not varsity or WPIAL places.
I like that. Build it so they can't ignore you. In a good, reflective way.
That exists in other sports too. Like when I swam for both the high school and for USA Swimming. So if
Like a
USA
travel team.
Ultimate were big enough for varsity teams for schools to notice, hey, we should have a varsity team too. That would probably be more likely to swim.
We do have a lot of kids who play soccer at the same age, and that's but that one thing
Or AAU basketball would be like outside of the school sphere.
But would those same teams compete against other Pittsburgh teams or against other regional teams? Becomes the question.
Travel teams, yeah. Travel hockey's big in this area. I mean, but again, you're going on the weekends to tournaments and stuff.
Right, like there are traveling club youth teams that we have, but that's outside of the high school team, which is what we're talking about.
Right. Would it make sense to create like non-school teams within the high school league that are like, I guess, areas within the region?
Yeah, I think that would make sense.
Like, there's some, like...
But that's a separate structure. We're talking like pool. I mean, it's
Right, I understand that. I'm saying, is like the current pool model the best way to go about having a sustainable program?
That's a very introspective question.
I don't have the answer to that. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, they played with Fox Chapel in the fall, but in the spring with the USAU and going to states and there being school-based teams, they can't play in the spring, but they'll play in the summer, they'll play in the fall.
If there wasn't pull, we wouldn't have a team in Central.
Right, exactly.
So club that wasn't affiliated with high schools, just youth club in general.
Yeah, there are other clubs. They're just not the spring season itself.
So the thing is, I know with college level, if you don't have enough players to make a team, they'll let you play with a college team that's nearby. You have to send in a request at the beginning of the year. I don't know, I guess what I'm hearing is high school doesn't have that. So maybe creating what high school has that, college has, and making it for high school so they can play with a nearby high school team.
That's, yeah.
But are those in place so that you can play the series, like the USAU series? Because otherwise, you don't have to adhere to any of these rules that have been set up. Like, there could be an entirely independent high school age, ultimate competition that exists, but what we've set up so far is either high school or the traveling club team, because you want to be able to play in the USAU section series. Yeah. I don't see a solution there necessarily. It's just they're different for different reasons. The motivation to fit within that system is so that you can play the series.
Do you have any points we diverged on?
We sort of had, we had one. Okay. Did I catch it? Whether the model is to put money through the schools or to build the product and so the schools say, I want that too. So you're giving them a package.
I think making it really easy for middle school teams to, what was the word, consolidate, create multiple school teams. It ought to be encouraged. Not only should there not be any obstacles or hindrances to that, it ought to be actively encouraged.
I mean, you only need a few middle school teams to do that, like 2 or 3.
You do regional teams. There's a North middle schools team. There's a South middle schools team. There's just regional.
And then you play each other.
Play round robin, and then that's your season.
Would that be short term or long term? Would that be something you sort of start with and encourage them to eventually have full school teams?
Short term to get it going, because then the hope is those kids who are first exposed to ultimate frisbee as middle schoolers, then when they go to whatever high school they go to, then they're like, oh, I want to do this sport in high school, and you're building it from the bottom up.
Our middle schools. I have one middle school who runs it as an activity. They do an activity for 45 minutes once a week, and they have 40 kids that signed up for frisbee.
After school program? You said
It's during school from 2 to 2:30 or something. And I gave the one teacher who was running it a bunch of this so she could do it. In another middle school, they wanted to do it as an activity after school. So from 3 to 4, I sent 2 or 3 of my players on varsity, and I told them we don't practice on Thursdays, do it then. And they did it once a week during the fall, and they had anywhere from 20 to 25 kids each time.
And that was something where you did that within your school district, because there's two middle schools within your district.
Yes.
But was it because the teachers were interested?
The teachers were interested, and I just helped get the ball rolling because I don't have time to donate to 2 more teams. So I needed help.
Okay.
And they stepped up and helped.
Okay.
So our local middle school league, I guess at one point we had 4 or 5, maybe 6 teams. And I think what allowed it to grow there was recruiting out of the summer camp, the local summer camp. So run a great summer camp and tell the kids, go back to your school, gather up some of your friends and form a team, and you can join the league. Give them the resources they need. So wherever there's a good summer program, you have a lot of what you need to get a good middle school league started. But of course, it needs a lot of support.
Yeah.
The challenge with that, though, as well, I think that we're seeing this year is recruiting for the summer programs. Like, we already talked to some of the schools, like, where else do you go to recruit those random kids who want to play in the summer program as a channel into these middle school and high school teams?
Is is there like a Pittsburgh Youth Athletic Association or like any sort of nonprofit organizations that you could? Right. Right. I mean, I played like baseball, like for some random
city parks would be. Well, like each kid got a disc for signing up for the season, and in there had the Camp Spirit information. How many of those kids threw them on whatever field they were playing on that day versus passed it on to the next generation. Right.
Jenna, who are you trying to recruit kids for the summer program?
For the Camp Spirit of the Game, which is our summer program.
Okay.
I mean, so I founded Camp Spirit, and I mean, what we found is that you've got a lot of parents who don't know what to do with their kids during the summer, and they're willing to pay to send their kids to a good camp. Miranda here was one of our star campers for many years. I mean, if you can run that as a profitable business, and in any area, urban area this size, I think you ought to be able to create a profitable summer camp business. Now, whether USA Ultimate wants to do that or whether they want to support local for-profit camps, remain agnostic on that. But you've got a built-in need there. Parents need to figure out where their kids are going to go in the summer. There's a huge opportunity there to grow youth ultimate. We haven't even talked very much about summer camps. That's a big piece.
Legitimizing the sport in general, so the parents think, oh yeah, I can send my kids to play ultimate for a week, and that'll be awesome. Instead of that sport seems fake. Soccer camp.
I think it's more than just
they're more likely to get injured.
When I started playing frisbee, my parents had a whole different view. They're like, oh, that's the one, you know, the hippie one. Thank you. And I didn't have the best word for my parents at first, just because they didn't know about it. But playing high school and playing college, they came out to summer league games, and they started realizing that this is a good group for me to play for. And now I have the opportunity to coach, and I'm trying to talk to my kids' parents, or the kids I'm coaching's parents, and it's really hard to get some of them to be like, yeah, you know, I'm all for them playing this. It's most of the kids on my team don't want to tell their parents because they know their parents' views on the sport itself.
Are there USAU like marketing materials and videos specifically targeting this like parent group that might not want their kids playing ultimate?
I don't think it comes out and says, do you not want your kid to do this? You know what I mean? Like, it's not quite that clear. Not as much video as I know our coaching outreach people want, because they've got all kinds of video planning.
I like the 50-year video, other than the one image where they're holding beer bottles. Just cut that one out. But the rest of the 50-year video...
They had to cut a lot of naked points out. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you guys, in the 80s.
And I'll send that out, and they watch Pitt play nationals, and they're like, whoa, that looks awesome.
I think with like marketing commentary directed at parents and not just like...
Yeah, I know.
That's also...
I just use the resources I can find.
YouTube highlights it.
I mean, some of the
pretty good. This is page 2.
National
it's page 2. You don't get to have 2 pages.
I told them they could have 2.
We do, so.
I write big, Henry. Catholic school, you know.
Are you close to wrapping up? Yeah?
I think so.
It's getting easier and easier as it's becoming a little more popular to recruit people.
Yeah.
Kids are getting less ripped on for playing and actually getting appreciated and like, wow, you did that. It just takes time to get exposure.
Yeah, it matters. We'll bring it up when you get a chance.
Bring it up. Okay.
So folks, here's what we talked about, and sort of the culmination of all that, the points of divergence and convergence. And we're just going to quickly go through these, just 2 minutes apiece, left to right. And Tom, start with yours, Olympic future.
Thanks. Yeah, so we had a great discussion, and I think the general theme was that there's a lot of, particularly with the embracing of the values by the IOC and the USOC, that it'll be really, really good for growth. It'll be great for growing youth. and will be great for gender equity because there's no better platform. If you ever watch the Olympic Games, it's probably the best sports platform for really showing both genders as fabulous athletes in very equitable ways. It can also help us grow indoor and beach, which can be really important for us to continue to grow the sport, where kids go into a YMCA, a Boys and Girls Clubs, etc., can play indoor in a gym and get introduced to the sport and then want to play more. And just like last night, exact same thing. The one concern or thing to be wary of is just make sure that while we pursue this, we don't sacrifice values.
Great. Okay, this one's a little more controversial. So the issue here is we have a policy right now in USAU that says we will not recognize these semi-pro leagues because their values are not the same as ours. And we care about our values, so we don't want to interface with them and support them at all. The group's reaction overall, and so the question is, do you like that policy? Should we change it? What do you think? How's it playing out? The group's reaction overall was that the current policy is a wall, essentially preventing any communication between the groups or preventing anything good from happening. And there's a lot of good happening through the semi-pro leagues, and it's a shame to have no ability to get something good out of that for both parties. And so what the group would prefer, and this is all convergence actually, is that there's some incentive-based policy that says we will give you this if you can do this, and that there's some way to get things to move forward where there's something other than, right now there's no incentive. The AUDL has no incentive to do anything because we're just saying we're gonna ignore you. And if instead we have some incentive thing, well, we'll give you this if you move this way. The only problem with that is if we do that, and that's what we get to and why we need this, if we do that, we're basically saying, now we're going to support this group that is not putting women on the stage. And that is something we kind of can't do because women need to be on the stage. So the way we can get there is this idea of a roadmap that says, in the end, our goal is that there is actually AUDL adopting our values and having something that lives up to our values, and that it is, in the end, 8 years from now or something, it's played mixed. Or maybe there's men and women's. It's played with observers or some type of observer. And there's a long road to get there. But if we agree, and the AUDL agrees, that that is a place we can get to, because we actually do all believe in these values, then maybe we can start taking incremental steps to get there, where we are actually doing something to help the AUDL. They're actually moving a bit in our direction on these values, and we aren't saying, well, we're basically abandoning women when we go help them out. Because no, in the end, we're going to actually get there. The goal is to get there. So we think there might be a way to actually make that work. Dave Leonetti had no shortage of ideas. The potential of 4-on-4, this is where you can have real equity, right? You got 4 women, 4 guys, and the AUDL field is much larger. It could work perfectly. Andrew Gardner of the Thunderbirds thought you could, one of the things somewhere, in year 4, you'd have a round of play that involved mixed. And so it'd be like 3 or 4 games that impacted your record and possibly how you're standing going into the playoffs later or something like that. So there'd be a way to work this in over a long period of time if it was successful. Women would have to come out and watch. I mean, the benefit is, I think women would want to come watch if there were women playing, especially with the women stars that are out there. That could actually bring more fans. So I think the whole thing might work. Okay, that's that. Branding.
Okay, so my group talked about branding, which is basically just the overall public impression of USA Ultimate as an organization and as a bigger brand as a whole. So we talked about the challenges and possible solutions for those things, and I'm guessing this is not a surprise to many of you, but the #1 challenge was our website. So it's difficult for people who are coming to the website of all user groups, players, coaches, fans, people who don't know anything about the sport. It's hard to find what you're looking for, and it's an obstacle and a challenge for us. So that's one of the things that we addressed. The second is a lack of connection between USA Ultimate and local events and players. So a lot of these events are sanctioned by USA Ultimate, but there's very little brand presence from USA Ultimate at those events. So the idea is to try and make USA Ultimate more synonymous with the sport of Ultimate as a whole, so that when you go to an event, you think, oh, USA Ultimate, clearly you're involved in this, and it makes you proud to be part of USA Ultimate. The third thing we talked about was communicating better the overall goals and vision of USA Ultimate, so that people have more buy-in and have a better understanding of where we're going as a sport, so that people have a little more attachment to the overall idea and to the organization as a whole. So that's a little bit about the solutions too, but for the first one, for our website problem, obviously rebuild the website. But at the same time, while we're doing it, gathering input from all of the potential user groups that we have to make sure that their insights and ideas are taken into account when we're doing that, to make sure it addresses their particular needs. Number two, this is our group's little, I guess we could make it a hashtag, but flags and swag. We want to make sure that at these local events, we have a branding presence. So we're talking about things like, obviously, flags at the event, maybe a tent, maybe a t-shirt, maybe a sticker, whatever it is. We also had a volunteer potentially get a tattoo. Thanks, Ron. So we want to make sure that people are visually associating USA Ultimate with the events they're playing at. And then our third is basically just to communicate better. It's always possible to do better about communication, and we want to make sure that we're doing a better job of letting people know what our goals and vision are, so that they can actually get bought into that and hopefully then improve the USA Ultimate brand.
Okay, for diversity and equity. So we spent a little time talking about what equity meant and what that kind of looked like, as well as the areas in Ultimate where equity is a thing. So the biggest issue, not issue, but conversation piece right now is gender equity, but we have equity among age groups. We need to talk about equity within the different divisions. And as we add diversity pieces, there needs to be equitable play and opportunities there as well. So our summary piece on the paper, most of it applies to the gender equity piece, but I think a lot of it can apply to what we can do to build our diversity piece as well. So welcoming environment at all levels, so that can be at the local levels within leagues, that can be in club teams, that can be at the university level when new players are coming out to join some of the college teams, whether it's a B team, whether it's only a single team, but everybody is welcome regardless of their skill level. We also talked about having a go-to person, and I think this was a little more in the context of league play, but having somebody on designated on every team that if you don't know what a term means or what a particular defense is, or basically what's going on, that newer players have an opportunity to go find that person, and they know who that person is, and they can go ask that person questions and feel safe in doing so. In terms of resources, this was a little more particular to building the pool of female players. So we talked a lot about the idea of coaches and building our pool of female coaches, that in and of itself might be a way to get more women interested in playing if they're going to be coached by females. Money is a barrier oftentimes, so in our group we talked a lot about at the college level and who has access to money and the like. And then having mentoring programs and having those mentors be male players and female players even. So having sort of that crossover in the genders where the males are allies essentially. Communication, so educating about gender issues, using more neutral terms. So this is a big one I hear a lot in my world as well, that you don't call it man defense, you call it person defense instead. So things along that line. I don't remember what keep in the forefront was. You went over too, so that's okay. So if anybody remembers what we were talking about at that time, that'd be great. But then also to have talking points. These two kind of are related, but talking points to team leaders in leagues and the like, so that they know how to talk about some of these issues, whether it's diversity issues or gender equity issues. And then this one came up a little more about the diversity, but it also kind of fits well with increasing the female membership as part of the picture. So partnering with other community organizations who already do work in those areas, that at the local level that we can, we don't have to reinvent things. We can go to those people and see how they do it and maybe combine efforts in that regard.
Okay. We
focused on the future of the sport and how to get kids in to programs, competitive, and staying with the sport all their lives. Great representation from parents, athletes, coaches, summer camp organizers, board members. It was tremendous. I think what came through was that we have put so much pressure on the kids to do this themselves that it can be overwhelming. And even when you do have, and this is particularly at the high school level, and when you do have kids who can do it, they graduate. And then the whole program can collapse. You have coaches who are tremendous and very dedicated. They get another job. They can't do it anymore. So for all these reasons, you don't have continuity, and that seemed to be a big theme. So then the question was, and this was a difference, how do you try to build the continuity? Do you try to get money through the schools and incentivize them to put the structure in place? The consensus seemed to be that the schools weren't really looking for something else to do. So then the thought was to invest through the local organizations to get the schools seeing that this was really cool and something that they wanted because other schools were getting the notoriety for having good teams. So to help the kids, the thinking was to have a website where they could go get their teams rostered, know where the fields were, know where the other teams are to play. An issue of legitimizing the sport with the parents and what marketing tools could USAU provide or local organizations provide so that parents didn't see this as a stepchild kind of sport or worse, something that they didn't want their kids associated with. Incentivizing the coaches, dollar signs are on a couple of these things. And a discussion of how much schools paid, for example, the faculty member who was also the basketball coach. And it's not that much more money, maybe $1,000 or $2,000, but it comes school by school by school. So some schools would have it, some schools would not have it. We talked about the Riot model in Seattle, where a condition of playing on the women's club team is that you do community service, and that can be in the form of coaching. And is that something that would be attractive to put outside Seattle? And then there was a discussion of USAU ultimate fees for coaches, and are there ways to bundle that product so that coaches are incentivized to participate, and does there have to be a commitment that they're going to do it for a certain period of time? So some other points that came up were how we define teams, both at the high school level, the middle school level, so that perhaps you don't have to be actually enrolled in a school, but you could have regional teams. Particularly at the middle school, this seemed to be attractive because there just isn't the number of kids or the infrastructure at that level to have a school-by-school approach. And then finally, we talked about the importance of summer programs and the need that working parents have and other parents have to know that their kids are going someplace good and learning something that'll be cool for the summer in a safe environment, and using that as a feeder mechanism. And we had one organizer who said, you know, you can make money at this, so it doesn't have to be necessarily a subsidized program. 2 minutes, Henry?
2 minutes and 1 second. Thank you, Kathy. So, there it all is. Nope, this is where the conversation starts. Anything jump out at you? Anything, anything you're seeing, anything across all these that's common, some threads through here? Yeah, Jenna. I gotta get my notepad. Hold on. They currently have no team sports that are played mixed, and they see that as a weakness. And gender equity is important to them too. It is a great selling point. And it is most likely the tool with which, because we actually play at the highest level mixed successfully, that may be the tool that gets us into the Olympics. Okay. Yeah.
Most vital ones that we were talking about were, one, gender equity, and two,
So what else are you thinking? What does this all look like when you add it up?
I'll just say this requires two, because it's exhausting. I'm exhausted. I'm so tired. It's so much work. And I think 30 people. It'd be awesome if we're going to guys.
Tomorrow is the goal.
Our best short-term shot is that LA win the bid for 2024. They are aware of us, they like us, and if they win the bid, there's a shot. And I would have never said that 3 years ago. So, at the earliest, yeah. That would absolutely be the earliest. That's one of the reasons why we are a consideration, is we just repurpose another venue. It doesn't cost any money. And we check a bunch of boxes that the IOC is interested in, and they love the millennial viewing audience that we could attract. So there's a lot of positives, and that's our first shot's going to be 24 if LA wins. Now, LA is really going to struggle to win because the rest of the world isn't super excited about what's going on in the United States in some ways right now. So that'll impact some votes.
Okay, great. So, yeah.
Thanks. Hey, for Olympics, and it's a wonderful step in the right direction to be recognized as a sport by the IOC. Fantastic. But in just my own informal, just kind of researching online and trying to read around and get more information. And I actually first heard about it reading in Sports Illustrated. I took a photo, and I texted out to all my players, said, hey, like, we got recognition. We're a sport as far as IOC is concerned. It's awesome. I didn't like kind of the wording of the little thing they said. Hippies across college campuses now rejoice. But it was a couple years ago in Sports Illustrated. It was a quick little blurb. But trying to read more about it online isn't one of the holdups of getting us elevated up and getting us in and getting us to be part of an upcoming Olympic Games. You have to demote another sport. Doesn't the Olympics sort of have like a cap number of sports, and something else would have to be dropped from their lineup for Frisbee to get in, right? Yeah.
The guy with the answer happens to be
3 years ago, yes, not anymore. So there's a big thing that happened. This is why it actually went from dream to possibility. The IOC went through a big reform thing. It's called, you can look it up, it's called 2020 Reform Movement. And they are revamping the way they decide what sports are going to be on the program. It used to be someone had to get kicked out for somebody to get in, not anymore. So they've changed it to where they're going to look at disciplines in sports. So for example, you may see some of the track and field disciplines get dropped out because they're not very popular. which will create opportunities for new sports to get added. They're looking at it in a much more creative way. They're also looking for new sports that are sort of hip, cool, popular with millennials, because the average age viewer at the London Olympic Games was 55. And they looked at it and said, whoa, we got to do something. That's why you see on the winter side all the new sports coming in. So 3 years ago, yes, not anymore.
Sarah.
Yeah, I think a really big thing that, okay, so before tonight, I don't know that I was on the Olympic as our #1 priority train, or why it should be, and I think that's where, like, and if that's a big solve-all for a lot of the other stuff we're dealing with, branding and buy-in stand out to me as really big needs from USA Ultimate to kind of get the local level more excited about why what the USAU is doing is good, and also, you know, the large question that every team to establishment is trying to figure out is how to get more buy-in. But if we can get the buy-in of why youth, or donating time to youth, or donating money, or being an ally is important, if we can get that buy-in, we can also solve a lot of problems, I think.
Thanks. Okay, I just wanted to speak a little bit. I know we've identified the Olympics as this great opportunity and gender equity as a value that is very important to realize in that opportunity. And I think it's important with this roadmap to merge values with semi-pro to consider how the way that Ultimate is present outside of the Olympics is going to become more visible if we get into the Olympics. So it's very important, I think, that the value of gender equity is not sacrificed. I know that's definitely not a goal of USA Ultimate, but something that we need to be conscious of as a community, I think. That we want to make sure that we're kind of supporting that value on all levels.
So all of these are extremely important, but one thing that when Sarah was talking kind of poked in my head, branding. So 10, 12 years ago when I watched the Disney Channel, there was a little segment where Zach played, not me, Zach played Frisbee and talked about Frisbee during one of the Disney commercials. Very brief, maybe 30 seconds. But is there anything, maybe that direction, TV that kids watch that could grow the youth program and branding wise?
Yeah, there's a new Disney show that they just had a couple of segments on Frisbee, as a matter of fact, that I just found. I do think that I'll give you an example of a sport that is growing so fast. They're kind of like lacrosse now, they can't keep up, is archery. Anybody want to guess why? Hunger Games. And they literally can't keep up with their growth. So yes, absolutely. You get the right, you know, it's almost like a product placement kind of strategy. But if you get the right product placement of Ultimate in the right movie or television show, it could be huge.
Okay, so we said we were going to get you out of here at 9 o'clock, and it's 9:25 or something like that. There's 3 things you need to do and 1 optional thing. There's a survey on the way out. It's just a single question, 1 to 10. Did communication happen tonight? Did we hear you or not? Then there's a comment section there. If you've got some ideas for how to make that communication better, please tell us. I'd like if you would add information about, was it too long or too short? Because that's something that we keep going too long, and I don't know if that's a problem or if you'd like to keep talking. So if you could just write that down, I'd appreciate it. The third thing is really going to be fun for you. You're all going to get 5 dots. And the dots you will be able to place on the thing you think is the most important thing, or 5 most important things. So those are the 3 things I need you to do. Because we've run over, your optional thing is to listen to a couple stories. We've got a whole different format for the close where some people with a story about their experience with Ultimate that bears on all this are going to give us just their 5-minute story. And it's going to be Marcus Rainai Dropcho and Sarah Lemansky. And what we could do is you can put your dots up. You can actually do that exercise now and fill out the questionnaires. We'll put those on the table here. And then we'll all gather. The people that want to hear the stories, stick around and gather around the front of the room over there so that people can leave if they want to leave, because we're over the time, and I apologize for that. Is that okay? Okay, so with that, let's get our dots and questionnaires and get all that going, and then whoever wants to listen to some cool stories will be up at the front. Okay, and you do have the option to leave. We promise we will not be insulted if you leave. We realize we drag you way over. Thanks. Nice sneakers.
Okay, so my brief story here is I was thinking about moments that influenced me in my athletic life, and a memory that is vivid still is when the U.S. women's soccer team won the World Cup in 1999, and at that point I'd already been playing soccer for 5 years, but Brandy Chastain, shirt over her head, running around, excited, out of her mind. That image inspired me to continue to play as a very competitive soccer player for the rest of my high school career, pretty much. And basically until I found Ultimate, did I continue my soccer endeavors with these female role models inspiring me to kind of dream big and also believe in my own athletic potential. So I think what we're missing right now in Ultimate is having these female role models at the forefront, and that's on a world stage. It's on also at the local level. So that can look like streaming of games and women getting equal coverage, whether that be on ESPN or just what Ultiworld is putting out. It's in the pro leagues, if you want to look there, that there are not females being called pros and getting the same highlights and coverage. And it's also at the local level where, at least it feels like, there are fewer female coaches leading teams, both female teams and male teams, to be that role model of a smart communicator, knowledgeable Ultimate player. So, and I think also even in the very local level of leagues and community pickups, where we don't necessarily have females taking the opportunity to be league captains or not necessarily getting the respect that they deserve on those teams. So it comes from both women not taking the initiative and there not being an environment that allows for women to take the initiative.
For my bit, I'm going to take you guys back to 2015, where I was able to play 4 levels of the game in 1 year, which I feel like doesn't happen a whole lot, but I got a lot of perspective from each of those levels. So I was able to play college, I was able to play club, I played pro that year, and I also played international play. I was interacting with a lot of different people that I usually, well, in some cases, which I usually don't interact with. But also I had the opportunity to play against a lot of differing competition and a bunch of people that play the game or approach the game in a different way than me. And kind of what I'm going to get at in this whole thing is why I sort of abstain from playing pro, what my reservations are about it, what my fears are for the potential of what it can do if that norm kind of perpetuates itself, and then kind of how I interact or see myself interacting with that. So just being involved with Ultimate from when I was a freshman in high school, and from my dad playing, I've always understood and encompassed spirit of the game as one of the most important things that governs the way that I conduct myself in the field and approach my competition and my teammates. Right from the get-go, when I started playing on my high school team, I knew that was one of the most important things that I needed to continue to embody in my play, moving forward with the amount of years that I was going to be playing the game. So, saying that is a really easy thing to do, but when you're in a game, in a high-stakes competition where a lot is on the line, and you're called upon in a moment to act on those things that you say you hold yourself accountable for, that can be really difficult. And I found myself in that instance at 2015 College Nationals. We were playing against UNCW, and they were up. They had broken us going upwind, so they were pulling downwind, a pretty upwind-downwind game. So it was going to be tough for us to actually get the hold. And I think this is the point, perhaps. I want to say it was 7-4 or 6-4. But anyway, big point, a lot of momentum riding on this point. The pull comes down, I'm on offense, and I'm tasked with stopping the roller pulls that they had been throwing all game. I've done this a million times. I know what I'm doing, but for whatever reason, maybe the disc takes a slight left turn with the wind, or the wind kind of shifts its trajectory, and the pull, it glances off my hand as I'm going to stop it, and rolls through my legs and goes out the back of the end zone. And so immediately I, freak out. I kind of kept it under control, but in my mind I'm freaking out because, maybe I just cost us this huge point and, bring them into half and have us down 4 points. But another part of me thinks that, I don't know if anyone actually saw what happened. I might have actually been the only one that had known, because it was pretty, minor, the touch on the disc. So I thought that maybe for a second, in this pre-quarter game, I might just let this go, because I had someone on my team who didn't think this was happening, bring it to the front of the line. So I didn't say anything for a second as he's bringing the disc up. And then, some people are kind of wondering what I'm going to do, especially some other people on the team who thought, maybe you touched that disc. And, in that moment, I was like, what am I doing at this point? All the things that I always tell myself that I'm trying to be and embody my play, I'm not living up to. And, in that moment, I realized why it's so important to self-officiate, because in that moment, if a ref doesn't see that I, made that mistake or whatever, that's just, you can blame it on the refs and then it goes the other way. But because I'm the only one who actually has the power in that situation, being the one with the best perspective to make that call, and if I was on the other side, I would want them to be in integrity and make that call the same way that I would. So I did, and I called it out, and we started on the back line. Not to say that karma exists or anything, but we ended up getting an upwind hold. We had Pat threw a miraculous huck, and we ended up putting it in somehow. It was a miracle. But that just really taught me the responsibility of a player in a moment to not only say to other people, yes, the responsibility of all players is to do your due diligence and do your duty to the sport and the spirit of the game and make the correct calls. But it's also to enact that in a moment where it really matters. You know, that was an elimination game. We're fighting for our lives. We're almost going to go down 4 points in the first half. But I, was able to kind of rein myself back in from the competition and say, this is actually about something that's bigger than this, and kind of self-moderate and self-officiate in that moment. And the thing that I didn't really like about the Pro League that I played in later that year was I found a lot of players kind of gaming that same situation, not to the extent where they're, and this is players on other teams, and I found that these same players who I played against in club formats, in tournaments, who have abided by spirit of the game and those rules, because they find themselves in a different avenue format where they can kind of manipulate the rules or manipulate what the refs see to their advantage, they will do so, which was just, I don't know, sort of troubling to me, especially after coming back from international play where other countries take spirit so seriously and hold themselves to a really high standard. Coming back from that and finding that really important, and then just going back and seeing people flopping or trying to draw fouls instead of just like what I'm used to is talking out discrepancies if you have problems with the way that other people are reacting. Sorry, I went over a lot, but that's the way I feel about it, and I feel like if Pro continues to attract people who are not familiar with Ultimate backgrounds, like I was, or like people that have grown up playing under Spirit of the Game, then that has the potential to be like one of the most integral parts of our sport has the potential to be lost. So that's why I play Pro, and I try and actively talk about why, if anyone asks me, why I choose to do so.
It's probably hard to do. Well done. Anybody have any questions? I imagine everybody wants to go home. I'm really glad I got to hear those stories, though. Yes.
So obviously, Marcus, we're cool with the whole thing. But anyway, you talk about, growing up with spirit of the game. So a lot of these players have spirit of the game, and you mentioned that you had played against club players who then transitioned over to the pro model, who started, maybe flopping or trying to take advantage of a referee model. So what is your essentially take, like when you started playing the pro model, you weren't flopping or you weren't trying to take advantage. So why do you think that these players now adopt this, like, well, I can take advantage of this type of model, especially when the pro leagues have an integrity rule, which essentially allows the player to overturn any single call that they want to that goes in their favor?
So, like, are you asking me, like, why, in an instance where someone would, like, feign a flop or something, why I wouldn't employ the integrity rule in that moment?
Essentially, if everyone is brought up on spirit of the game,
Yeah.
then why, like, and if they flop in a pro model, do they really have any spirit of the game to begin with?
Probably not, no. I think it's...
So, like, I guess my question would be, like, why then are we seeing these types of, like, shenanigans in the pro level?
I think I don't really have a good analogy, but I'm just going to use a few bad apples one. And I think that as that...
Bad apples in the pro game, aren't they bad apples in the club scene as well?
Yeah, there are not, no, I'm not, sorry. When I'm comparing to, I'm not saying that people that function under the USAU umbrella and in those competitions are not exempt from morally or faulty objective play. There are definitely people that game the rules. I've played against plenty of teams that have had players that have done that for sure. But I think that in the pro format with referees being the people that have the ultimate call, I think that leaves less of a burden of responsibility on the players to do that. And at the end of the game, if you have to look your opponent in the eye like you do in the pro game or the USAU game, and you know that you didn't have any impact in the calls that were made, I would feel less guilty than I would shaking that person's hand at the end of the game, knowing that my lack of objectivity and integrity actually changed the course of this game, maybe for the, I mean, probably for the worse.
Do you feel like the integrity rule doesn't do enough to allow the player to think it does have a final ruling on the field? Because that's what the integrity rule is active.
Right.
Rule referee in any situation or fault.
Yeah, I think it does definitely work in some circumstances. I've definitely seen it work, especially in games that are close. But I think there's a lot of instances where it's just, you know, people are going to get fouled on the mark, and people are going to get a little contact to the mark and you know, pivot but not actually call a foul and don't think it's a foul, and they're just going to take the free yardage, because why wouldn't you in that circumstance?
If you had spirit, you could argue that you wouldn't take the extra.
Well, sorry, what do you mean?
Oh, so you're saying if it was like a ticky-tack foul,
Yeah.
and they didn't really believe it was a foul,
Mhm.
they could enact the integrity rule and not take the yardage, but if you took the yardage, then you would argue that those people didn't have spirit to begin with.
Yeah, but like you could
still enact that and essentially run it the way that they want to, even though it's like a referee law. Like there's nothing preventing the players from saying this foul benefits me, but it didn't actually happen, so I'm going first.
Yeah, I agree. I just think that in a model where the responsibility, like integrity rule is a component of the game that's definitely built in that sort of acts as a surrogate for spirit of the game, but I don't think it completely captures and encapsulates it. And I feel like I said, I feel like when I was playing that, I mean, I don't think it ever actually came into any game where I played in, but I have, like I said, I've seen it enacted. But I just think the responsibility lifted to you know, another power that's observing or presiding over the game doesn't give the same amount of responsibility on the game's outcome. Mm-hmm.
Had that same occurrence happen that you talked about the NCAA games were full of new lights,
Yeah.
and the referee had ruled that didn't put the game from,
Mm-hmm.
would you have still enacted an integrity rule in that situation in a pro game or not a club game?
I mean, I think I'd be less likely to.
So, I mean, I think that's something like that's what we're about that. I just think the why players view the pro game differently, even though they have the same tools to make the final decision.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just people like feel like they can. I mean, I knew this from the very first time I had a friend play in the AUDL. First thing he told me was, you can get away with so much in the AUDL because of I guess at that time it was lack of referee training. Anything that's away from the disc was basically free game. He said it was like checking out there. And teams were doing this, not getting called for it. I mean, there was integrity at that point, but it's like, at some point you can't, I don't know, stop the game or, you know. Sure. I mean, in the AUDL there's stuff to like circumvent that, but and you know that not getting called and persisting kind of just percolates down to, well, if they're going to do it, then we're going to do it. I mean, there was a practice where, like, I mean, Indy, crazy fouling on the mark, and so we at Thunderbirds Riders we practice for that, you know, and you know whether that becomes you know, habitually ingrained into the way that we approach the game. It's still something that we're, you know, receiving and aware of. And if they can do it, you know, in the format that pro is, you know, what's to stop us from doing it? It almost seems like it's an unfair advantage, I guess. I don't know.
Because a lot of people have a lot of thoughts, but it seems like the point basically that you're stating, Marcus, and that I would say too, is that people often play within the parameters that you give them. And I would say that somebody can be a good person, I mean, good, bad, and also an argument that could go on for a long time, but when the level of accountability is different, then they're going to act differently. So I think that if the spirit of the game is an important value in semi-pro, that's something that probably, and it's not being reflected, that's something that could probably be coming from the top down a little bit more as something that the players do need to hold themselves accountable for, and maybe the integrity rule is not enough.
You know what I mean? So if the other person is wrong, they have no recourse, like, yeah, like you do it.
USAU certification coaching exam today and passed it on the second time after I got all the answers the first time. You know, looking at the documentation twice, now I have it in my head, which is that something that is unique about coaching Ultimate versus coaching other sports is that we, as coaches, are second in power to players on the field. So players on the field, those who are actually playing, have more power than anybody else. And I think in a world or in a sport where there are referees on the field now, and they suddenly have more or equal power, that changes that dynamic. And so there is just inherently less responsibility on the player to be making the right call or the integral call. So, I mean, I think if that is something that is important enough that it's preached in how we coach Ultimate, it sounds like a really important part of what USAU cares about as far as what Ultimate is and how we define the sport of Ultimate. And so that would be something to bring back to the pro game as far as who has the power on the field, and when the power dynamic shifts, how do we still stay accountable to what the game is supposed to be?